Of course, so much is said about Benedict Arnold, and so much is unsaid about Benedict Arnold. For example, his service here. He was the de facto second-in-command of the army under Horatio Gates during the Battle of Freeman's Farm. Remember, it's Benedict Arnold who is sending regiment after regiment to the field at Freeman's Farm. And it is probably because of him doing this that the British were halted in the field. And it was a Pyrrhic victory for them. If Gates had allowed the British to come to the lines of defense, who knows what would have happened. Now, Benedict Arnold, being the kind of guy he was, did a brilliant job at Freeman Farm in terms of taking an active role in the fighting there, in terms of sending troops to the front. I don't mean he was out there sword in hand leading charges, that wasn't the case, but he was sending troops to the front. And for Benedict Arnold, unfortunately, this was simultaneous with something that he had just gotten from Congress. You see, earlier in the year, he tried to resign from the army. He did not want to be in the army anymore because other generals in the army had been promoted over him. He had seniority over them, and they were promoted over him, 5 generals. He was infuriated by that. About, I don't know, a month and a half, 2 months later, he gets the promotion, but now he's still junior to these guys who should be junior to him, you see? So he wanted his commission date backdated. He wanted it backdated so that he could have seniority over these 5 generals. Congress decided that they would figure that out. They would try to debate it and see how it would work, and etc. Just before the Battle of Freeman's Farm, he gets word that Congress voted the resolution down, that Arnold would not get his hoped-for seniority restored. So Benedict Arnold fights the Battle of Freeman's Farm with his regiments, and every single regiment, save one, was from his half of the army. Every single one. So he's thinking very well of himself. Well, look what I did in the Battle of Freeman's Farm. Then a couple days later, he gets a copy of the letter that Horatio Gates wrote to the President of Congress. And the letter from Gates to John Hancock said, hey, we did great, you know, we killed to 1,000 British troops, gross exaggeration, they didn't know, but 1,000 British troops, this and that, kudos go to Morgan and Poor, and etc. Arnold is not mentioned in this letter. Whether it's on purpose or by accident, who knows, but he's not mentioned. Arnold gets a copy of this because it's a copy letter to be circulated, and he is infuriated, absolutely infuriated. So he and Gates have this meeting, and Arnold lets him know why he's angry. Gates is just going to be a stick in the mud for whatever reason. He is not going to budge on his reasoning for doing what he did. We don't know why he did it, unfortunately. But Arnold is a very prolific writer at this time, so he's writing letters to Gates. And they're in the Horatio Gates papers. But Gates's letters back are pretty dismissive, and they're not very helpful, shall we say, to the historian, aside perhaps from the fact that they don't say much, and probably tell you what Gates was thinking of Arnold. But anyway, Arnold came to the point where he was so sick of being under Gates's command because of this slight that he wanted to leave the army, to be with George Washington. He wanted to serve Washington near Philadelphia. And so he asks for a pass to go to Philadelphia. Gates writes a letter to John Hancock, a letter of introduction. And the letter says something to the effect of, hey, President of Congress Hancock, this letter is to introduce to you Benedict Arnold. And it goes on to say something to the effect of, oh, I'll tell you more later about what's going on with this situation. Arnold has this open letter addressed to John Hancock. This is his pass. Now, he's even more angry. He writes back to Gates and he says, Gates, if you want the mail delivered, you should have it sealed. I want a pass for Philadelphia. Gates responds. In this letter, General Arnold is enclosed a common pass, underline, and feel free to leave whenever you want, my words. But, yeah, leave whenever you want. You're of no use here. Benjamin Lincoln, the actual second-in-command of the army, has now arrived. It's between the battles of Saratoga. And Gates is thinking, well, you know what, I don't need Arnold. He's a supernumerary general. He's irrelevant. I have Benjamin Lincoln. Mind you, Benjamin Lincoln was one of the 5 generals promoted over Arnold earlier in the year. A very thick plot going on. So Arnold is furious at the fact that Lincoln is here. But Arnold decides to stay. He doesn't leave. Supposedly, we can't prove it, but supposedly a petition was written up and signed by many officers of his division. The petition doesn't exist, but there is a contemporary reference to it in a letter from one of Arnold's aides to Flip Schuyler. In a letter, he mentions this petition. If it was written, we don't know. But that's supposedly why Arnold decided to stay. On the 1st of October, 1777, Arnold writes his last letter to Gates, and he says the following, quote, "I am repeatedly ill-treated and abused at headquarters. There are officers junior to me who know more about what's going on than I do. I am treated as nothing more than a cipher in the army. I am never consulted upon any occasion," etc., etc. He's laying out his grievances. He then accuses Gates of being jealous of his courage and his leadership. He actually says this to Gates in a letter that he wrote, because these two guys are not on speaking terms, so the letters document it very nicely. Oh, it's really bad blood, and they're just not communicating. And what Arnold is admitting is that although he's not removed of command, he was never removed of command, he was not allowed to actively command anything because he was just ignored completely. 7 October rolls around. It's the day of the Battle of Bemis Heights. Horatio Gates orders out Morgan's Corps, Poor's Brigade, Leonard's Brigade, regiments, brigades that are still technically in Arnold's division. But unlike the first battle, what Gates does is he tells the Deputy Adjutant General, the great hero of the American Revolution, James Wilkinson, to order the attack. I heard some snickers. To order the attacks directly. So James Wilkinson, the Deputy Adjutant General, 19 years old, imagine that, but he orders out Poor and Morgan and Lerner directly, completely circumventing Arnold's authority. I guess Gates can do that, but it's not a nice thing to do. Arnold, infuriated by this slight, you know how Arnold is, he's very touchy about these kinds of things. Many were, but he's overly touchy perhaps. He decides that, okay, that's it. He's going to go out there and participate in the attack as well, as you could say, like an independent volunteer. He mounts on his horse, he goes out there, he participates in attacks, he joins attacks in progress, he motivates and encourages troops. And it's here that he's going to be severely wounded in the left leg. Now, I have a theory as to why he was doing this, and my theory is the following. The theory is that I have, is that if you look at Arnold's promotion track, every time he does something pretty amazing like this, you know, going out there and participating in a battle, he gets promoted. He became a Major General of the Continental Army from the rank of Brigadier General because of his work at the Danbury, Connecticut raid. It's because of that and his heroism there that he got the promotion. I believe that he was hoping that he would have his commission date grandfathered if he did something heroic here. Now, he's severely wounded, right? Horatio Gates reports to John Hancock about what happened here in the Battle of Bemis Heights. And he says of Benedict Arnold, he actually mentions Arnold's name. He says that Arnold was, and I quote, gallant. Gallant. What does Congress decide to do? They decide to vote again for a resolution to backdate his rank, and he gets it. It's approved. The inscription on the back of the monument is, there's a factual error. It says that Arnold won for himself the rank of Major General. That's not true. He was a Major General, but he had his rank grandfathered back, so he would be senior to the 5 others who were promoted over him earlier in the year. Problem is now, he's severely wounded in the left leg. He goes down to Albany. In the hospital, Dr. Potts wants to cut his leg off. Arnold says, no way, cut out the shattered portions of the bone, reset the leg, and we're going to try to make that work. So they do it, and it works. But he's convalescing in the hospital in Albany for nearly half a year, bedridden, no doubt stewing over all of this going on. He gets his promotion. He's probably happy about it, but infuriated that, you know, who knows if he's going to ever be able to actively field again, commanding troops, which is the thing that he liked to do. So after he leaves the hospital at Albany, where does he go? Valley Forge, joins Washington. Well, that's nice, but the British evacuate Philadelphia. Washington pursues them. You have the eventual Battle of Monmouth Courthouse. Who does he send to command at Philadelphia? Benedict Arnold. Why? Because he's not well enough to ride, well enough to field, well enough to command because of his leg wound. And as you probably know, it's there in Philadelphia that he begins doing things that he shouldn't do.